In the sweltering summer of 1847, insurance investigator Samuel Hartwell stumbled onto a mystery that would haunt him for life. 17 life insurance claims had been filed in just 8 months along the Charleston-Columbia Road, all involving healthy men aged 25 to 50, all dying suddenly of heart failure while lodging at roadside inns. But what truly disturbed Hartwell wasn't just the frequency of death, it was the pattern. Each victim was found with a sweet, unfamiliar scent on their breath and oleander petals scattered in their rooms. Authorities brushed off the incidents, blaming the oppressive climate and the general hazards of low-country travel. But Hartwell sensed something darker. His investigation uncovered a chilling conspiracy, calculated murders carried out with cold precision by the last people anyone suspected. The victims were successful businessmen, exhausted from travel, lulled into trust by kind innkeepers who offered them restorative remedies. Hours later, they were dead. The insurance payouts totaled over $85,000, a fortune funneled quietly from grieving families to someone who had orchestrated each death with almost surgical precision. Before we explore the story of the 6-mile Wayfarer house and the woman who turned Southern hospitality into a weapon, don't forget to subscribe and tell us which state you're listening from. We love hearing from fellow mystery lovers drawn to America's forgotten shadows. The truth about Lavinia Fisher was more sinister than Charleston society could ever have imagined. Hartwell would expose a killer cloaked in charm, reciting scripture at church socials, serving poisoned tea with a smile that disarmed even the most cautious traveler. Charleston in 1847 was a city of immense wealth and rigid social codes. The spires of St. Michael's Church rose above streets lined with rice and cotton mansions. Spanish moss draped the live oaks like veils of southern elegance, concealing a harsher reality, a city built on slavery, ruthless ambition, and fragile reputations. In this world, appearances were everything, and women were expected to be docile, decorative, and pure. Any deviation could destroy not only a woman's reputation, but her family's as well. The road between Charleston and Columbia was vital for inland trade and speculation. Merchants and planters made the journey carrying cash contracts and secrets perfect targets. The route was isolated, passing through pine forests and swamplands teeming with danger and shadow. Inns ranged from luxurious to barely livable, and only the savvy knew where to stop and whom to trust. Hartwell, a 34-year-old investigator from the Mutual Assurance Company of Virginia, had a reputation for uncovering what others missed. Educated at Harvard and relentless in pursuit, he brought a precision and tenacity that clashed with the more genteel instincts of Southern investigators. What he discovered in Charleston would not only change his life, but rewrite how the city viewed its own genteel society and expose the deadly truth lurking beneath the lace and grace of Southern womanhood. Samuel Hartwell had a reputation built on results, 12 years of investigative work without a single unsolved case once he committed. At first, the Charleston office of Mutual Assurance saw nothing unusual in a series of claims involving middle-aged businessmen dying suddenly. Yellow fever, malaria, and cholera were common killers in the humid low country, and men pushing themselves through grueling travel often collapsed without warning. But Hartwell's trained eye spotted a pattern others missed or ignored. Each man had purchased life insurance within 6 months of his death, always well in good health, always traveling alone, and every policy traced back to a single, elusive female agent who drifted along the travel routes like a ghost. At the center of it all was the 6-mile Wayfarer house, a grand Georgian-style inn located 6 miles north of Charleston, perched just before Goose Creek and surrounded by dense forest and swampland. With wide piazzas, towering columns, and elegant windows meant to catch passing breezes, it offered a haven of refinement to weary travelers close enough to Charleston for comfort, yet secluded enough to guarantee privacy. The inn had been purchased 3 years prior by John and Lavinia Fisher, who paid in cash, claiming inheritance from a Savannah uncle. Their lavish upgrades, Persian rugs, crystal chandeliers, imported furniture hinted at either remarkable optimism or secret wealth. Lavinia was the kind of woman men remembered long after forgetting everything else, strikingly tall, with copper-red hair, piercing green eyes, and a complexion untouched by the southern sun. But her true power lay in her voice, her charm, her uncanny ability to make strangers feel deeply known and endlessly interesting. She remembered names, asked about family matters mentioned in passing, and expressed concern with the warmth of a lifelong friend. She spoke with the polish of Charleston's aristocracy, moved with grace, and carried herself like a woman born into wealth and grooming. John, by contrast, was forgettable, short, stocky, with thinning hair and the kind of quiet diligence that made him almost invisible. He managed the grounds and repairs with obsessive precision and was widely regarded as reliable, generous, and devoted to his dazzling wife. The first death to catch Hartwell's attention occurred on February 14, 1847, Valentine's Day, a detail that would later take on grim irony. Cotton merchant Theodore Grayson had arrived late that afternoon, his carriage brimming with contracts and samples from a successful Charleston trip. At 48, Grayson was a shrewd and respected businessman, tough-minded and sharp, especially adept at exploiting his rival's weaknesses. According to the magistrate's report, one Hartwell would pour over. Repeatedly, Grayson seemed merely tired upon arrival. It had been unseasonably warm, nearly 70 degrees, and he'd complained of the heat and fatigue. Lavinia herself greeted him at the door, offering not just hospitality, but a special tea which she claimed was renowned throughout Charleston for its remarkable restorative powers. That tea and everything that followed would soon reveal the chilling truth behind Charleston's most charming innkeepers. Lavinia explained that the tea she offered came from a cherished family recipe passed down through generations and made with flowers from her own garden. That evening, 2 other guests, a rice planter named Harrison Calhoun and a North Carolina tobacco inspector named Wesley Dry, would later provide detailed testimony describing cotton merchant Theodore Grayson's final hours. They recalled how Lavinia gave him extraordinary attention, engaging him in lively conversation and ensuring his every comfort. The tea was served in delicate rose-patterned china and had a unique flavor. Grayson praised sweet floral with a hint of honey he couldn't quite place. Revived by its warmth, he soon launched into animated tales of business triumphs and plans to expand into Georgia. His decline came slowly. At first, slurred words, long pauses, a paling complexion that Lavinia dismissed as post-travel fatigue. By 9 p.m., he complained of chest pain and shortness of breath. Lavinia sprang into action, sending John to fetch Dr. Reginald Peaton while she personally attended to Grayson, helping him to bed and ensuring his comfort. Dr. Peaton, despite being 73, remained Charleston's most esteemed physician and arrived near midnight to find Grayson in critical condition. His pupils dilated, breathing shallow, and a strange, almond-like odor saturating the room. Peaton noted signs of poisoning and an irregular heartbeat, but could not identify the toxin. Despite his efforts, Grayson died peacefully around 2 a.m. On February 15th, his body oddly serene for a man who had supposedly been poisoned. Most puzzling were several pink oleander petals scattered around the bed with no clear explanation. When questioned, Lavinia calmly suggested they had drifted in from her garden, though seasoned locals should have realized that oleander doesn't bloom in February. Hartwell would later find her composure during the crisis suspicious. Witnesses described her as remarkably calm, even efficient cleaning the room herself before the doctor arrived, claiming she couldn't bear to see a guest left in such a state. The death was ruled natural, and the $5,000 insurance payout, nearly a decade's salary for most working men, was issued without delay to Grayson's business partner, Marcus Redmond. The policy had been sold just 4 months prior by Laura Ferguson, an agent from Augusta, whose paperwork appeared flawless. But Grayson's death was only the beginning. As spring returned to the Low Country and commerce resumed its rhythms, more men died, each under strikingly similar circumstances. Yet the deaths occurred in different jurisdictions, and the Fishers' refined hospitality shielded them from scrutiny. In March, tobacco inspector William Claiborne in Charleston, to investigate inconsistencies in export-bound tobacco, died at the 6-mile Wayfarer house. His demise was chalked up to stress and southern heat, but the attending physician couldn't shake his unease at how closely Claiborne's final hours mirrored Grayson's right down to the T. The symptoms and the same inexplicable floral scent that lingered in the room long after the body was removed. Like Grayson before him, William Claiborne arrived at the 6-mile Wayfarer house exhausted from travel and was warmly welcomed by Lavinia, who once again prepared her signature restorative tea with practiced care. Witnesses recalled the tobacco inspector's praise for the beverage's unique floral flavor and the renewed vigor he seemed to display afterward. But within 2 hours, he was gripped by intense chest pain and labored breathing, which rapidly escalated into full cardiac arrest. Peyton called again from Charleston, found Claiborne's lifeless body eerily peaceful, identical to Grayson's, with that same almond-like scent lingering in the room and oleander petals mysteriously scattered across the floor. Though troubled by the similarities, the aging physician chalked it up to improbable coincidence after all. Unlikely things did sometimes happen in medicine. But the deaths didn't stop. In April, land surveyor Edgar Beaumont, known for mapping elite plantation boundaries, died following the exact same pattern. Still, authorities treated each case as a tragic anomaly, blind to the deliberate orchestration behind the scenes. Then came May, and with it, a brazen uptick in frequency. 2 more men perished within a week. James Rutledge, a rice planter from Georgetown, and Thomas Bellingham, a merchant from Columbia. Both died at the inn. Both after drinking Lavinia's tea. Whispers began to circulate about a curse on the property, with some blaming restless spirits from long-forgotten travelers. Yet even as rumors spread, local admiration for the Fishers grew. Lavinia had become a pillar of the community, donating generously to the Methodist Church, leading sewing circles that drew the town's most respectable women, and providing tireless aid during past disasters. During the hurricane of 1846, she personally nursed wounded neighbors, and when yellow fever struck the following summer, she volunteered to care for victims, earning the heartfelt gratitude of dozens of families. John Fisher earned equal respect through quiet, unassuming service, offering expert carpentry and labor to anyone in need, never asking for payment, simply calling it his Christian duty. Together they appeared to embody the ideal Southern marriage, John's unwavering devotion mirrored by Lavinia's gentle grace. Their bond was admired, their generosity revered. And yet, amid this growing affection, Samuel Hartwell uncovered the first piece of evidence that would eventually unravel everything. As he traced insurance claims across 3 states, a chilling pattern emerged. Many of the deceased had purchased policies from the same enigmatic agent, a widow named Laura Ferguson, who traveled between Charleston, Savannah, and Columbia, selling sizable policies to affluent men she encountered along the way. According to her paperwork, Ferguson's husband had died in a tragic carriage accident, prompting her to enter the insurance business. But her sales record defied belief. Within 2 years, she'd secured over $200,000 in policies, an astronomical figure for the era. To Hartwell, it was no longer coincidence. It was a system, elegant, lethal, and terrifying in its precision. Laura Ferguson's rapid rise in the southeastern insurance world should have earned her accolades, not suspicion. Her client conversion rate was nearly flawless, as if she possessed an almost supernatural gift for persuasion. She approached men during casual meetings at inns and taverns, offering policies that perfectly matched their financial capabilities while maximizing payouts to beneficiaries. Her grasp of each client's business dealings, travel plans, and family dynamics hinted at investigative depth far beyond coincidence. Hartwell's suspicions intensified when he compiled physical descriptions from surviving clients. All described Ferguson the same way: strikingly beautiful, with auburn hair, green eyes, an unusually tall frame, and a voice as melodic as it was persuasive. The details matched with uncanny precision every account he'd heard of Lavinia Fisher. Urgency gripped Hartwell in June after 3 more deaths: plantation overseer Daniel Thornton Cotton Factor, Robert Sinclair, and tobacco merchant George Peaton. All within a week, all alone, all insured by Ferguson, and all poisoned after accepting drinks from charming innkeepers. Oleander petals and that distinct sweet almond odor were present in each case alongside missing cash. And documents, a fact dismissed by local authorities as post-mortem theft by opportunists. But Hartwell recognized the method: planned encounters disguised as chance meetings, carefully calibrated to gain trust. Ferguson had met Thornton in Orangeburg, impressing him with knowledge of plantation operations. Sinclair in a Charleston cafe where she spoke fluently of cotton markets. And Peaton in a Columbia tavern where she understood tobacco processing with startling accuracy. In every case, she presented herself as deeply concerned about her clients' families and expertly guided them toward increasing their insurance coverage. To expose what was now clearly a coordinated multi-location murder ring, Hartwell knew he would need to act. He crafted a false identity: Samuel Henderson, a cotton broker from Richmond, Virginia, complete with a backstory involving business expansion, recent insurance purchases, and vulnerable family obligations. It was bait, and if the Fishers were indeed behind the murders, it would be enough to draw them in. But stepping into the 6-mile Wayfarer house meant stepping into the jaws of a predator, fully aware that accepting their hospitality might very well be a death sentence. Hartwell arrived at the 6-mile Wayfarer house on a humid Thursday afternoon in late June, having meticulously timed his visit to mirror the arrival patterns of previous victims. Like them, he would feign travel fatigue, accept all offers of comfort, and quietly gather the evidence that might finally expose the truth. The inn, even more striking in person than he had imagined, radiated an opulence that seemed wildly inconsistent with the modest income of a roadside establishment. White columns gleamed in the slanting sun, and the manicured gardens exhaled a tapestry of competing floral scents, signaling wealth that should have raised questions long ago. Lavinia Fisher greeted him at the front entrance, and in an instant, Hartwell understood how so many capable men had been undone. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her disarming manner that made her truly dangerous, her gaze warm, her voice melodic, and her every question cloaked in affectionate curiosity. She gathered information with surgical precision, skillfully extracting details about his fictitious business family and finances, all while appearing merely polite. When he mentioned the recent expansion of his life insurance policies, her smile brightened. Her eyes gleamed with a flash of satisfaction, and she praised him as a man who clearly took care of his responsibilities. She then insisted on preparing a special refreshment, a restorative tea passed down from her grandmother, made with flowers from her own garden, an innocent gesture laced with menace. "So many of our guests have told me my special tea is quite unlike anything they've ever experienced," she said with practiced charm, gesturing to the colorful beds blooming just beyond the parlor windows. Hartwell felt a chill as the casual mention of past guests reminded him of men now lying in unmarked graves. While she moved to the kitchen, he took the opportunity to examine the inn with a professional eye. What he saw confirmed every suspicion. The interior was lavish Persian rugs over freshly refinished hardwood floors, oil paintings in gilded frames, crystal chandeliers suspended from molded ceilings, and dining furniture upholstered in silks far beyond the reach of any honest innkeeper. Silverware displayed in ornate cabinets bore hallmarks of Charleston's most esteemed artisans. But it was the subtle details that spoke loudest. The silver was unblemished, the crystal flawless, the furniture pristine. None of it bore the marks of age or wear expected in a family-run inn. These were not heirlooms passed down over generations, but new acquisitions, signs of sudden wealth amassed too quickly and too discreetly to be explained by room fees. Either the Fishers had inherited a vast fortune, or they were funding this illusion of gentility through means far more sinister. And if Hartwell's suspicions were correct, that fortune had been carved from the quiet, unmarked deaths of men who had once sat in this very room. Given the chilling pattern of deaths and suspicious insurance claims that had brought Hartwell to the 6-mile Wayfarer house, the source of the Fishers' wealth now seemed all but certain. The sudden appearance of John Fisher from a back office only deepened Hartwell's suspicions. The man carried a stack of ledgers and correspondence, which he clumsily tried to gather when he realized Hartwell was in the parlor. Gone was the calm, self-effacing host, replaced by a figure radiating nervous energy. His hands trembled slightly, and his smile was brittle. Business correspondence John offered quickly, voiced tight and rehearsed. We maintain connections with several merchants in Columbia and Charleston. Supplies recommendations, record-keeping, that sort of thing. It was a prepared answer, too smooth to be spontaneous, and Hartwell noted the shift in his demeanor. This was no simple innkeeper, but a calculating man used to managing appearances and covering tracks. Through the kitchen doorway, Hartwell could hear Lavinia humming softly, a haunting melody that might have seemed beautiful in another context. But now it filled him with dread, likely the last song many of her victims had ever heard. Drawn toward the doorway, he watched her work with an efficiency that bordered on ritualistic. She moved between jars and containers with a practiced rhythm, carefully measuring substances into a delicate china cup, her face devoid of warmth, cold, focused, and methodical. The transformation from gracious hostess to precise poisoner was so stark it was chilling. When she noticed his presence, she instantly returned to her charming persona, her face lighting up with effortless grace. Almost ready, she called sweetly, voice laced with that soft Charleston drawl. I do hope you'll enjoy it. So many of our guests have told me it's quite unlike anything they've ever experienced. Absolutely unforgettable. The emphasis on the last word struck Hartwell like a knife. There was no doubt in his mind. She meant it literally. Whatever was in that cup, it was not meant to revive him. As she approached, offering the drink with poised elegance, he noted the tea's unsettling pink hue and its overpoweringly sweet floral aroma, cloying, almost narcotic. More disturbing still were the small fragments drifting in the liquid, unmistakably similar to the oleander petals found near every victim. This wasn't speculation anymore. It was evidence. And now Hartwell stood at the very edge of the trap. Just when we thought we'd seen it all, the horror in Charleston deepens. If this story has you chilled to the bone, share it with a fellow mystery lover who isn't afraid to look into the darkest corners of history. Hit that like button if this story has you hooked, and don't forget to subscribe. Because what happens next in this tale of deadly Southern hospitality will leave you speechless. Hartwell accepted the delicate china cup with trembling hands, fully aware that this single decision could determine whether he lived to expose the truth or became another footnote in the deadliest string of murders in American history. The tea's intoxicating aroma overwhelmed his senses. Sweet floral laced with something darker, something narcotic that made his head spin just from inhaling. as he raised the cup to his lips. Lavinia watched with unsettling anticipation, her gaze too eager, too intense for a simple act of kindness. In that moment, Hartwell saw through the illusion beneath her radiant smile and perfect manners. Was a predator one who had turned every symbol of feminine virtue into a weapon? Beauty, charm, charity, even the sacred rites of hospitality, each had been sharpened into a tool of manipulation and murder. He fumbled the cup deliberately, feigning clumsiness, and spilled the liquid across the richly woven Persian rug. The sweet, pungent scent flooded the room, and in the center of the spreading stain, tiny fragments of pink oleander petals bloomed like warning signs. Lavinia's mask cracked. For a fleeting moment, her face twisted with pure murderous rage, cold, feral, and unmistakably real. Then just as quickly, she recovered, composing herself into the image of gentility, though her eyes still burned with barely restrained fury. "How unfortunate," she said, her voice still melodic. "You've missed the chance to enjoy my grandmother's special recipe. But not to worry, I'll prepare another immediately." "Please don't trouble yourself," Hartwell replied, masking his dread behind feigned embarrassment. "I think I need rest more than tea. I'm more exhausted than I thought." As he spoke, Lavinia knelt to clean the spill, and the petals in the cup became visible confirmation of everything Hartwell had feared. Then came John Fisher, appearing almost on cue, his sudden presence too perfectly timed. Gone was the meek innkeeper. Now he stood poised, alert, his eyes darting between his wife and Hartwell, like a man ready to act. "Is everything all right, my dear?" He asked, the words more performance than inquiry. "Our guest is simply tired," Lavinia replied, stepping subtly between Hartwell and the only exit. "I think he should rest now rather than wait until this evening." The exchange was unmistakably coded. Hartwell could feel it. Plans were shifting, and he was no longer a guest, but a problem to be managed. He maintained the charade, claiming exhaustion and retreating to his assigned room, where he barricaded the door with furniture and lay awake in the dark, heart pounding, listening to the creaks and murmurs of the inn around him, sounds that confirmed beyond all doubt that he was deep inside the lair of killers who had perfected murder under the guise of grace. Through the thin walls and creaking floorboards of the old inn, Hartwell listened as whispered voices exposed the full horror of the Fishers' operation and the immediate danger he faced. Lavinia's voice, stripped of its practiced sweetness, was cold and venomous. "The investigator suspects something," she hissed. "We may need to accelerate our timeline if we want to avoid exposure." John's reply was hesitant, uneasy. "How can you be sure? Maybe he just spilled the tea. Guests are often clumsy after travel." "Don't be naive." She snapped, her fury barely contained. "No one spills tea that precisely unless they mean to." He watched me prepare it, studied every movement. "Someone's put the pieces together." Hartwell's breath caught as he spotted movement through his window. Under the pale moonlight, John was hauling a heavy canvas bundle across the grounds toward the swampland behind the inn. He moved with grim familiarity, vanishing into the moss-draped trees along Goose Creek, likely to feed the bundle to the alligators that patrolled the murky waters. Hartwell's stomach turned at the implication he was witnessing the disposal of damning evidence, belongings, bodies, or remains methodically erased from the world. Their system wasn't just deadly, it was perfected. And as midnight approached, the voices below grew clearer, revealing the true scale of their crimes. The Savannah contact confirmed we can get new identities. Lavinia said, her tone cool and calculating. "But it'll cost at least 15,000. "How many more will that take, John?" asked, his voice tight with fear, not guilt. "Depends what they're carrying and their insurance value," she replied as casually as if she were discussing crop yields. "The cotton broker next week should be worth 3,000. The rice planter after that, maybe double if the rumors about what he carries are true." "And the bodies?" John asked. "The swamp, "The alligators have been remarkably cooperative," Lavinia said, with a soft, humorless laugh that chilled Hartwell more than any scream. "By the time anyone searches those waters, if they ever do, there'll be nothing left to find." For nearly an hour, Hartwell lay in silence, heart-pounding, absorbing every chilling word. He learned more than enough to ensure arrests far beyond the Fishers. This was no isolated couple acting alone. It was a multi-state network of killers, grifters, and informants. They had contacts in Savannah who specialized in forged documents and new identities, Charleston accomplices who scouted wealthy victims, and Colombian informants who tracked travelers' movements. And Lavinia, whether disguised as Laura Ferguson or arranging accidental meetings at inns and taverns, was the refined predator at the center of it all, luring victims into a trap polished by years of successful murder. Lavinia Fisher's scheme was chilling in its elegance. She carefully assessed the financial profiles of her targets, sold them substantial life insurance policies whenever possible, and gathered precise information about their movements, families, and vulnerabilities. When her victims arrived at the 6-mile Wayfarer house, they were enveloped in an atmosphere of refined hospitality, so comforting, so sincere, that suspicion never stood a chance. Her signature tea steeped with oleander extract was the perfect murder weapon. Sweet in flavor, deadly in effect, and medically deceptive, it mimicked natural heart failure with alarming precision. Once the victim succumbed, the Fishers stole their money, jewelry, and documents, then disposed of their bodies in the surrounding Goose Creek swamp, where alligators made sure no trace remained. The deaths were ruled natural, the bodies unexamined, and the absence of family ensured no uncomfortable questions were asked. Meanwhile, the payouts from the insurance companies made the entire operation obscenely profitable. As dawn crept across the humid South Carolina landscape, Hartwell listened to the heavy tread of John Fisher returning from the swamp, his boots thudding on the porch as he washed away the last traces of another night's grim work. The investigator spent those final hours before sunrise, meticulously documenting every word he'd overheard, detailed records of murder insurance fraud and corpse disposal, along with the names and roles of accomplices spanning Savannah, Charleston, and Columbia. But knowing the truth was only half the battle. His life still hung in the balance. The Fishers had clearly grown suspicious, and Hartwell was certain they would kill him if given another opportunity. His only edge was that they might still prefer to use their standard method to avoid mess delay detection and maintain the illusion of civility. At dawn, he made his move. Calmly, he informed them that urgent business required his immediate return to Charleston, apologizing for the inconvenience. Lavinia's smile was polite, but her eyes betrayed something far darker. "I do hope you'll return soon, Mr. Henderson," she said sweetly, though her voice now struck him as venom disguised in velvet. "It would be such a shame if our paths never crossed again." Hartwell returned the smile with a cold one of his own. "I'm certain we'll meet again under more favorable circumstances." He was right. On July 3, 1847, the arrest of John and Lavinia Fisher sent shockwaves through Charleston society and beyond, shattering the illusion of genteel Southern virtue and exposing one of the most sophisticated murder-for-profit schemes in American history. Hartwell's evidence, combined with a comprehensive search of the 6-mile Wayfarer house and the surrounding swampland, exposed the terrifying scale of the Fishers' crimes and confirmed beyond doubt the systematic nature of their murder enterprise. Beneath the kitchen floor, hidden inside a secret compartment, investigators uncovered a chilling ledger records meticulously detailing 23 murders carried out over nearly 3 years. Each entry listed a victim's financial status, travel itinerary, insurance coverage, and the method used to kill them. Even more disturbing were Lavinia's handwritten notes. Precise observations about poison dosages, symptoms, and outcomes. Clinical annotations that read more like scientific experiments than confessions. A trove of stolen personal effects was also found: jewelry, signet rings, pocket watches, items too distinctive to sell quickly, along with more than $12,000 in hidden cash amassed from theft and insurance fraud. The horrors of Goose Creek Swamp were confirmed when investigators recovered fragments of clothing, personal items, and scattered human remains: partial skulls, jawbones, long bones too large for animals to drag, irrefutable evidence that guests had been murdered and disposed of in the wetlands where alligators had consumed what was left. But perhaps most shocking was the discovery of Lavinia's private laboratory tucked away in a hidden annex off the root cellar. Inside was a sophisticated collection of poisonous plants: oleander, foxglove, castor bean, alongside distillation tools, tincture bottles, and medical texts annotated in her precise cursive hand. Her journals revealed months of experimentation, testing combinations of botanical toxins, measuring symptoms minute by minute, and refining her formulas to mimic natural causes of death. Her preferred agent, oleander, produced cardiac symptoms easily mistaken for heart failure, and was sweet enough to mask the presence of poison. This was not impulsive killing. It was methodical, perfected, and deeply informed by botanical science. During interrogations, the full scope of the Fishers' criminal network came into focus: a web of accomplices, informants, and forgers that stretched across Savannah, Charleston, and Columbia, each helping to fuel the deadliest murder-for-profit scheme the South had ever seen. The Fishers, whose real names were John and Lavinia Sorrells, were not simply murderous innkeepers, but central figures in a vast and sophisticated criminal network spanning several southern states. Their operation provided a chilling suite of services, identifying high-value victims, forging false documents, laundering stolen wealth, and eliminating evidence. The 6-mile Wayfarer house was merely one of several carefully selected killing sites used by the organization, which had left a trail of unsolved murders across the Southeast. Lavinia had indeed operated under the alias Laura Ferguson, her success as an insurance agent built on a lethal blend of beauty charm and cold psychological insight. She understood male vulnerability with uncanny precision, knowing exactly how to present herself as both desirable and trustworthy. Beneath her polished Charleston accent and gracious demeanor was a ruthless predator. The Sorrells were career criminals from New Orleans, he a former riverboat gambler. She a con artist who once seduced and robbed wealthy men. Their reinvention as genteel innkeepers had been a masterpiece of social engineering. They studied the customs of Charleston's elite, mimicked the speech and manners of the aristocracy, and constructed detailed false histories that allowed them to blend seamlessly into polite society. Their church donations, charity work, and social hosting weren't acts of kindness, but calculated investments designed to shield their true activities. The trial that followed was among the most sensational in South Carolina's history. Crowds packed the courthouse daily, desperate to see the radiant woman who had turned Southern hospitality into a method of systematic murder. Lavinia, ever composed, basked in the attention, even attempting to charm the jury and prosecution with the same disarming grace that had once lured her victims. Her beauty had not faded, and some witnesses swore she seemed to enjoy the spectacle. Her final words before sentencing were as chilling as they were revealing. Men are such predictable fools when it comes to a beautiful woman offering kindness and attention. They never suspect the hand pouring their tea is the same one measuring out poison. We simply took advantage of their weakness and society's ridiculous faith in feminine virtue. John Sorrells was hanged on August 18, 1847, stoically loyal to the end, refusing to name any other members of their criminal syndicate. And while Lavinia's ultimate fate remains a matter of historical dispute, one thing is certain. The legacy of their crimes shattered the illusion of Southern gentility and exposed the deadliest performance ever staged behind the veil of grace. Lavinia Sorrells followed her husband to the gallows 2 days later, becoming one of the first women ever executed in South Carolina, and perhaps the most infamous. Thousands gathered to witness her final moments. Even as she faced death, she remained unrepentant and defiant. Her last words sent a chill through the crowd. "I regret nothing except that we didn't have time to perfect our methods further." If society insists on treating women as helpless ornaments, it shouldn't be surprised when some of us use those expectations as weapons. The 6-mile Wayfarer house was abandoned immediately after their arrests, and locals swore the building began to rot faster than time should allow. Within 2 years, the structure had collapsed entirely, as if the evil it once harbored had poisoned the foundation itself. Rumors of ghosts and vengeful spirits kept buyers away for decades. Meanwhile, Samuel Hartwell's investigation reshaped the insurance industry across the South. His thorough documentation and dogged pursuit of truth led to sweeping reforms. Improved agent background checks, coordinated fraud tracking, and systemic review of suspicious claims. His work became a foundational case study in criminal investigation. With the intelligence he gathered, law enforcement dismantled large portions of the Sorrells' broader criminal network, arresting key players in Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana. Yet some conspirators fled beyond the reach of the law, and whispers of similar operations in distant territories suggested that their blueprint for murder may have lived on. The case set new legal precedents and exposed the terrifying vulnerability of travelers in an era without reliable communication or centralized law enforcement. Years later, Hartwell would often reflect on how narrowly he had escaped becoming one of Lavinia's final victims. Had he taken just one sip of her tea, he would have been buried with the others. His death ruled natural, and the killing machine might have continued unchecked. The story of Lavinia Sorrells endures as a chilling reminder of how easily societal ideals, beauty, hospitality, piety can be twisted into weapons of destruction. She used the very traits Southern culture revered to camouflage predation, turning the rituals of kindness into instruments of death. Her legacy isn't just one of murder, but of manipulation of how the perfect hostess became a cold-blooded killer behind a silken smile. But what do you think? Was the full extent of the Sorrells operation ever truly uncovered? Or did other accomplices vanish into the shadows, free to strike again elsewhere? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your theories. Were there more victims never found, their stories still hidden in the swamps of South Carolina? And if this tale of charm turned deadly, sent a chill down your spine, be sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who loves uncovering history's darkest secrets. The past is filled with shadows, and together, we'll keep shining light into the places most people are too afraid to look. Thank you all very much for watching my video until the end. I sincerely appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.